Today is a great, wonderful, amazing, incredible day, and I'll tell you why. Because it's a Sweden day. 5 weird things about life in Sweden. Without further ado, let's get into this reaction. Let's go.
Every once in a while, I come across things in my life that are just different. As someone that is born and raised in America for the first 22 years of my life, and then moved to Sweden, and am now a Swedish citizen, there's still things to this day that strike me as peculiar. And being that this channel is really focused on talking about cultural differences between countries, anytime I experience enough of these differences, I jot them down in my notes. And when I have enough of them all together, I bring them to you guys on this channel of things that I've noticed that are just a little bit weird, specifically in this video about Swedish society. So without further ado, let's talk about these things that
Let's see if there's anything that I haven't heard before, but let's see.
are uniquely Swedish. This first difference is rather simple, but it can lead to a lot of confusion, especially this time of year, because this is the time of year where everyone is telling their employers what days or weeks they want to take off for vacation in the summertime. Okay. Well, we can leave aside the fact that people in Sweden get a lot more summer vacation or just vacation.
In the majority of nations, including all industrial states, this is minimum mandatory paid vacation days. Look how dark you're in. Oh, we're quite dark as well. So we get quite a lot of, yeah, we do, to be fair. Yeah. Wow, we get so much more than the rest of the world. I never knew that we got that's good about, and I feel like, I actually feel like we don't get enough. I don't know about you, but I feel like we don't get enough. But that's good to know, I guess.
Vacation days in general compared to people in the US. I've already discussed that on this channel. But in terms of actually reporting the days or weeks that you're going to be off, in Sweden, every week has a number. Whereas in the US, we simply don't number our weeks. And for me, this is very confusing when I ask somebody, when are you going to be off in the summer? And they say, oh, week 34 to week 37. I'm like,
week 34 to week 37?
What month is that? What days are that? Like, for me, coming from the US, it still causes confusion for me, which is quite funny. You'd think I would get used to it by now. The only time of the year where actually counting the weeks still makes sense in my head is like right after New Year's. I'm like, yeah, it's week 1, it's week 2. I can keep track. But this whole like week 35, week 37, the summer.
Do you really do that? You count the weeks? That is strange. That is very strange. To be fair, weeks, the only person that counts weeks, and I have seen it, is like my employer. So like when I used to work for the NHS, which is the National Health Service, which I used to work in a hospital, there was always someone in charge of the rostering of the rota, and that person would know what week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, they would know what number week it is. But we didn't need to know what number week it was. But on the roster, it would say the number of the week. But I guess you all kind of use that system in Sweden, which is interesting. Nice, okay.
Schedules, maybe it's not even 35, 37, maybe it's in the 20s. That just goes to show how clueless I am about counting weeks. So that to me is very different in Sweden. But if you're from another country that also counts weeks like this, let me know in the comments section, because I'm curious if this is just a Swedish thing or if it's just a not American thing. This second one is pretty funny, but I think that this one also says a lot about the culture on a deeper level. And this is the concept of provanställning, or trial employment, if we would translate it into
Trial employment and the work culture.
English. In Sweden, it's a lot more difficult to fire a permanent employee. Businesses have to document a bunch of things and jump through a lot of hoops.
Terminating employment in Sweden is considered difficult. Note that while there is no state-mandated severance pay in Sweden, there may be severance pay required by the employment contract or collective bargaining agreement. I think it's similar in the UK. If you're a permanent employee, you can't just sack somebody. There needs to be a reason. There needs to be, you need to give, I think it's 4 weeks notice, I think is the least amount of time for a permanent employee. I think it's either 4 weeks or 8 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. 4 weeks notice, and there needs to be a reason why, because a lot of employees, have unions. If you work in the public sector, like as a healthcare worker or a police officer or whoever, there's unions that you can go to contest why you've been told to leave. So it's hard in the UK as well if you're permanent. That's why there's a lot of temporary contracts in the UK, which are not, it's not right. No one should be on a temporary contract, but in the UK there's a lot of temporary contracts because they know once you become a permanent employee, it's very, very difficult.
If they want to fire someone who is underperforming. Generally in the US, it's a lot easier to fire someone. Now keep in mind, this could vary from industry to industry, but as a general rule, it's much easier to fire somebody in the US.
Oh my God, did you see that? A US employer can fire one of its workers without notice if they want to. That's because most US employees work under an at-will arrangement rather than performing their role under an employment contract. US workers are free to resign without notice, and equally, US employers can terminate a role without notice. That is, for me, that's not right, is it? It's not right at all, because they can literally, that's horrible. I was thinking, I'm starting to get like anxious thinking about that. If I lived in the US, I would be constantly anxious about my job. Imagine them just turning around. You go to work one morning and say, yeah, sorry, you're going to have to pack up your things at the end of the day. You need to go. They don't even need to let you stay for the rest of the day. They just like, pack up your things, you're fired. That's horrible. That's crazy.
And this could vary from industry to industry. But as a general rule, it's much easier to fire somebody in the US than it is in Sweden. But in Sweden,
I think we've got it right in Europe. We've definitely got it right in Europe.
Have this 6 months of trial employment. And pretty much during this first 6 months of trying out a new employee, the business can let them go if it's not working out. It was quite interesting because we had a new employee come into our company who is just a superstar. She does such an amazing job at everything. And I remember she'd been working with us for about 5 months. And she goes, I'm kind of nervous. I'm still on my trial employment period and I have to stay on for 1 more month in order to convert it to a more permanent employment.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, you're doing such an amazing job. I don't think there's any reason that you should be worried about that. Then I got to thinking to myself a little bit about my own mindset and what it would mean to work a job in the US. And pretty much in that situation, your entire career is a trial employment period, because if you're not doing well, it's much easier to be let go. Whereas in Sweden, you have this sense of security once you're permanently employed, which you...
He says that as someone from America, because he's come from a place where literally every day your job's at risk. Because we're from countries where, yes, we have a trial period of like a month before it turns into like a permanent, and we have the same in England. That month, that is like trial period. That's really nerve-wracking for us. Like, we find that, and it shows the difference between us and the United States, because that's what makes me nervous. When I have the trial period, I'm like, oh my God, they might let me go. Like, I might not be doing a good enough job. Like, yeah. The 25 best places to work for a good work-life balance: Copenhagen, Helsinki, Stockholm, Oslo, Auckland, New Zealand, Gothenburg, Sweden. Basically, mostly Scandinavia, and Scotland, I mean, is not far from you guys anyways. Do you know what I mean? Northern Ireland as well. So basically, what they're saying is, any place that has any links to Scandinavia and the Nordic countries. Basically, because Northern Ireland has a link to there, Scotland has a link to there, Austria's not far from there, Iceland obviously, Sweden, New Zealand not so much. I think New Zealand's the only one that doesn't have a direct link to Scandinavia and the Nordic countries. It's interesting, that work-life balance. You guys really champion that. I love that's great.
which you see translates to a very relaxed and secure work environment in Sweden, whereas in the US, people are always pushing and working hard, working extra hours, going above and beyond outside of their work hours. So I think this concept alone and the fact that it's harder to fire someone in Sweden really contributes to this work-life balance that a lot of Swedish employees have versus the hustle mentality, which is really ingrained in American culture. This next one is something that I've never fully adjusted to, let's be honest. Now, there are elements of this which are very nice. In the wintertime in Sweden, we all know that it gets very cold and very dark. But one thing that Swedes are really good at is making the meal times very cozy, very comfortable. They like to light candles, make it mysig is the word in Swedish for making it cozy and a nice vibe.
Sorry, I got distracted like looking at that really cool footage from our 9-day Swedish language boot camp. Maybe I should do that. Should I contact Stefan and do the boot camp? I mean, you never know. When I go to Sweden, when I do the vlog and I actually go to Sweden for the first time, if I do fall in love with it, I may have to convince my partner that we should move to Sweden. Maybe. Don't know. And I definitely would think about doing this boot camp.
Making the meal times very cozy, very comfortable. They like to light candles, make it mysig is the word in Swedish for making it cozy and a nice vibe. I, for one, really enjoy the mysig vibe. But the one area where I find that it can be a little bit strange is when it comes to eating meals. So imagine this. You're at home with your Swedish partner. One of you has been working hard in the kitchen for a long time to prepare a meal that looks absolutely stunning. You plate it up, you put it on your plate, but then right before you're about to eat, you turn all the lights off and light a single candle. This has happened to me many times.
What?
And I look at my plate and I can barely make out the food. I have to like sort of squint to try to figure out what is it that I'm gonna eat. This to me has happened time and time again throughout my time in Sweden. Although this mysig feeling is very cozy and it's amazing to light candles, I feel like I just need a little bit more light to enjoy my food properly.
So you guys like to eat food in the dark? Do you know what's funny? My partner does the same thing. Really likes to light lamps. I like to like see the food. I need a bit of light. But he likes to light candles and light candles and have like lamps on, and maybe it's that mysig. Is it mysig? That kind of culture. Maybe I need to figure out whether my partner's Swedish. Maybe, I don't know.
Properly. If there was a light with a dimmer switch, then maybe, not having it at the full dimness, but a little bit brighter. I don't want to eat in a completely bright room, and I think there is something to be said about a cozy ambiance, but I think Swedes are comfortable with having the light level a little bit lower than I'm comfortable with when it comes to eating. This next difference is very interesting to me as someone that has just recently become a Swedish citizen. And that is the difference in if you were to say you wanted to give up one of your citizenships. The US is a country that taxes you over the entire world. I mean, there are rules in place that you can deduct some taxes from a country that you're living in against what you would have to pay in the US. But the US is a country that's very unique in that you have to file a tax return even if you haven't lived in the US for years and years and years. Just the fact that you're a US citizen means that you have to file your taxes there. So there's a lot of wealthy individuals that consider giving up their US citizenship, especially if they have another passport. I don't think I could ever give up my US citizenship, but out of curiosity, I looked into what are the implications if someone wanted to give up their US citizenship, or on the other side, if someone was Swedish and wanted to give up their Swedish passport. If an individual decides to give up US citizenship, it clearly states that you can never become a US citizen ever again.
What? The oath of renunciation cannot be taken back. US nationality is not merely suspended, but irrevocably relinquished. Wouldn't that make you feel a bit weird? I don't know how I feel about that. That's very kind of like you're a prisoner. They're basically saying if you renounce it, you can never come back. That's kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that. Wow, imagine that. They're saying to you, you can't ever come back if you relinquish it. We don't want you anymore. Like, you've decided not to be a part of this great country. This is stuff like that about America I do not like. I don't think that's the case. I'm going to Google after this to see if it's the case for England, but I'm pretty sure it's not. I'm pretty sure if you renounce your British passport, your citizenship, you can get it back. Yeah, I don't know. What? That's crazy.
They sort of have this policy that you're either with us or you're not with us. And if you decide that you're not with us, then that's it. In Sweden, if you decide to give up your Swedish citizenship, it doesn't really seem like they're as harsh if you want to become Swedish again. Not only can you become Swedish again if you want to, but you'll actually be fast-tracked and have a faster process than people that have never been Swedish before. In terms of rules and punishments, the US can seem like it's a little bit...
So it says you need to be living in... If you relinquished it and live somewhere else, you have to move back to Sweden and live there for 2 years, and you'll get your Swedish citizenship back quicker. That makes sense. If you were previously a citizen of the country, paid tax in the country, why shouldn't you be able to get your citizenship back? Can't even say the word. Because especially if you were born in Sweden and you decide to relinquish it for whatever reason and you want to come back, well, on your birth certificate it says you were born in Sweden, then you should be entitled to a Sweden citizenship whenever you want it. Same as America, but clearly America's like, no, if you get rid of it, you're not coming back. That is some control. That is some, like, I know they talk about communist countries, but damn, like, what? That is like, we want to control you.
A little bit more of a harsh culture compared to Sweden. Whereas in Sweden, things are just more relaxed and people are more forgiving. And you see also the difference in Swedish and American prisons, which I also discussed in a previous video on my channel. That said, the cultural differences are quite interesting. The last weird difference that I want to point out in this video is when it comes to advertising, and specifically when it comes to advertising alcohol in Sweden. Right. According to Swedish law, you're not really allowed to advertise alcohol. So what do the beer companies do, or the alcohol companies in Sweden do? They advertise their product, which is 0.0% alcohol. I think it's kind of funny because everybody knows when you see an ad for Norrlands Gold, a 0.0, that it's just a way of their actual beer being top of mind, and it's just their way.
So the advertiser not the alcohol free, but by doing that, they are advertising the actual beer. That's clever. That's clever.
Way of going around the rules and, you know, abiding by the rules. But it's weird because in the US, or most other countries, I believe for that matter, you can just advertise alcohol. It's not a big deal. But Sweden has a very special relationship with alcohol, and I've discussed this many times with their Systembolaget stores, their state-run liquor stores that control the sales of alcohol. And on the flip side, America is kind of weird how we have our commercials for prescription drugs quite often that you can ask your doctor about, and then you'll watch a commercial and there'll be a big list of warnings and side effects that they have to...
Yeah, it's weird. America's a weird place. And in a lot of ways it's very free, but in a lot of ways it's not. Like, it's a weird place.
Verbally say on the commercial. I've never really seen a commercial like that in Sweden, but I do think it's a little weird that in Sweden they have these advertisements for 0.0% alcoholic beverages, and in the US it's weird that they advertise prescription drugs. So guys, those were the top 5 weird cultural differences that have been on my mind lately. Let me know in the comments down below which one you think was the weirdest, and if you think that there's anything that I missed.
They're all weird, but I found it the most weird that America doesn't allow you to renounce your citizenship. I feel like Stefan, do you guys feel this? I feel like Stefan should become like a he seems more Swedish to me than American now. And I feel like he should just renounce it. I think people are scared of renouncing where they were born. I do understand it, but at the same time, like, just because you renounce your American citizenship doesn't mean that you're not American. You're still American. He was born in America, right? So yeah, I don't know, but I like Stefan a lot. So make sure you go and subscribe to him. Make sure you subscribe to me. And guys, thank you very much for watching. Until the next one, I will see you very soon.